Hi, guys, me again, and welcome to episode 4 of Being Bubbly. I can't believe that we're already 4 episodes in. I am just honestly still blown away by all of the support and kind messages that everyone has been sending my way. Every single day, hear from someone new about something that I said that really resonated with them, or that they are just really appreciating me sharing kind of my real thoughts on just how unprepared I was for this particular time in my life. And every single message or comment that I get really is just wanting me to do more and more and more. So thank you, and please keep them coming. Episode 4, let's jump right in. But before we do, of course, we need to do our Lily fit check. This is actually going to be my Easter outfit, my Easter ensemble. So I'm very excited. And yeah, just another day, another Lily. Let's go. So for today's episode, we are going to take place where we left off in episode 3. Episode 3 was all about my journey with pregnancy, and it left off on the morning I woke up for my 32-week appointment. And then after kind of going through my experience with birth and sharing my story, I'm going to end the episode with, of course, a few of my hot takes in terms of just birth in general and my experience. I have a lot to say, a lot that I was very unprepared for. Shocking. I'm really excited to see if my thoughts resonate with anyone else who has gone through the birthing experience. So with that, let's pick back up from episode 3. Okay, 32-week appointment. I woke up. I felt pretty normal. Definitely had like a little bit of cramping, but when you're like, once you reach like your 30 weeks or your mid 30s, you definitely are cramping and feeling like those Braxton Hicks cramps consistently. And so I just thought it was, Braxton Hicks or just like normal pregnancy pains. I said this a lot in episode 3. I know that everyone's pregnancy experience is very different. For this particular pregnancy of mine, I did not have really any swelling. And so when I woke up that morning and my ankles were swollen, I have to say, like, I was a little bit excited. I did kind of want to feel that symptom of pregnancy. For me, I was just like, oh, that like makes this very real. Like, I'm getting close to the end. So I was very excited to see a couple swollen ankles. Other than that, I just went about my merry day, went to work, and we had a pep rally. And I remember at the pep rally kind of just feeling not myself, not terrible, but I just was feeling like extra crampy. My back hurt, kind of had a headache. I just wasn't feeling like normal. So I was excited that I had my 32-week appointment that afternoon. And so, I left work, went home, let the dog out, put on my comfy pair of sweats, and honestly left the house thinking I would be back in like 30 minutes. My doctor's office is literally 5 minutes up the road. And at that point in pregnancy, appointments are so quick. And so I was like, all right, I'll be back soon. Uh, Little did I know that that did not occur, and I wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. So that was really fun, especially for all of the things that I left out, like food, drinks, all the things. I went in for my 32-week appointment and shared kind of my symptoms that I had that day and just how I was feeling a little bit off with my doctor. And she thought it was pretty normal, but she was like, let's just get you hooked up to monitor just in case, especially, when I told her that my ankles were swollen, and that was something that I had not experienced yet. So she hooked me up to the monitor, and we were just kind of going through the questions that she typically asks at a 32-week appointment. And all of a sudden, she kind of like looked at the monitor and was like, you know what? I'm going to just do a quick ultrasound to just check on the baby. I'm like, okay. Which, by the way, there was like a closet in the room where she just pulled out this full-blown like iPad that had the capability to do an ultrasound right from the closet. Like, where was this device the entire pregnancy? I had to wait for a scheduled ultrasound to see pictures of my baby, and yet this iPad was just living in the doctor's office closet that was ready to be used. So that was kind of annoying. But very good thing that she did take that little machine out, because from what she could tell, she was not happy with what she was seeing the baby doing. And so she decided that they were going to do this special test, and I have the name of it. It is the fetal fibrin. I don't know. It's the FFN test. Okay. Can't pronounce it. But what this test does is it's like a swab, and they test the swab to see if you like what's your probability of having the baby within like the near future. I think it's within like 10 days or so. And if you test positive, that means you have a very high probability of going into labor relatively soon. And if you test negative, like you're good. Obviously, it's not a definite, but it is a good sense for doctors to know kind of like what's happening and if labor is in the near future. So she decided, based on what she saw from the baby, and then I was having some contractions when they hooked me up to the monitor, wanted to just send me over to the hospital to do just a little bit more testing and just get me hooked up for a stress test, just to make sure they can make sure the baby's okay and that like nothing crazy is going on. So I thought, okay, not a problem. So I went on my merry way to the hospital. I took my little FFN test with me so that the hospital can get the results. And on my way to the hospital, I called my husband, who, this is a very important part of the story, had just gotten to his company's holiday party. So obviously I didn't want him, leaving and coming to the hospital. I literally thought I was going to be at the hospital for a couple of hours. It was like mid-afternoon. So I just thought they would hook me up and then send me home. I told him, they're just sending me over to do a quick stress test, not to worry. Things are fine. So get into the hospital. They put me in my own little private room. I just remember being like, this is very nice. I had a heated blanket. It was Christmas time, so I had the Hallmark movie channel on. I had my like little pitcher of ice water and ice chips. I'm like, this is great. So I was very content in my own little waiting room area. So they hooked me up to the monitor, and they were just like, yep, we're going to take the FFN test and get those results. And until then, we're just going to hook you up, get a look at what the baby's doing, how you're doing, and that's it. So I said, okay, great. So I probably was in there for about an hour, and then the doctor came in and she said, okay, two things. Number one, your FFN test came back positive. And number two, you are in active preterm labor. So we are going to admit you because there is a high probability that you are going to have your baby tonight. And when I say, I literally was like, I had like an out of body experience. I was like, excuse me? Can you repeat that? Like, I'm 32 weeks pregnant. My husband isn't here. I'm nowhere near ready to have a baby. And you're telling me that I could potentially have my daughter this evening. Talk about like world comes crashing down. So after that, I, of course, call my husband, and very calmly, I say, hey, listen, I'm in preterm labor. Don't panic. But I do think you should probably come to the hospital now. They think that the baby might be coming tonight. I could just tell like his whole demeanor like shifted on the phone. So he obviously very abruptly left his holiday party. And I, right after, called my sister, who lives super local. She lives like 10 minutes away. And I was like, hey, I'm going to need you to come to the hospital. I'm in preterm labor. Kevin is at his holiday party. He's had a couple of cocktails. So I might need you in the delivery room with me tonight. I had no idea what to expect. We know how holiday parties are. It's, everyone, it's time to let loose. So I was like, you might need to get here to help and assist with delivery. So that was kind of my entrance into this whole birth experience. So they brought me into the labor and delivery room and hooked me up, got everything ready, kind of walked me through the process of a C-section, because at that time, that's kind of the route that they were recommending we go. Kevin showed up. I will say, hearing that your wife is in preterm labor at 32 weeks is a very sobering experience. So he came in, he was fine. Definitely like a little jolly, but totally fine. And then my sister came in shortly after with Chick-fil-A. So I just remember not really knowing what to expect, not really knowing what was going on. Obviously, we called our families and we're like, hey, this is what's happening. Everyone was kind of like not freaking out, but you can tell, like, you don't ever want to get the call that, your daughter or sister is going into premature labor 32 weeks. So once kind of everything settled, uh, it was just kind of a waiting game. And at that point, Millie had decided that she was calming down a little bit. They gave me magnesium sulfate to slow down the active preterm labor. And then at that point, like our main priority was giving Millie steroids through me, obviously, to help boost her lung development. So I guess when you are in premature labor or going to have your baby prematurely, they try and give certain steroids to the baby. That's going to allow their, certain organs that aren't fully developed yet to develop quicker. And so the main concern for Millie was her lungs, just because she was at 32 weeks, they weren't fully developed yet. So our concern was making sure that we reached to the point where the steroids were in full effect. And that's, I believe, like 48 hours after you get the last dose. So the next 2 days or so, we're really just focused on slowing down the labor, keeping me hydrated, and then giving Millie the steroids to help make sure her lungs would be ready for when she was born. And so I was then moved into not the labor and delivery room, but into like the long-term hospital stay area of the hospital, like the preeclampsia. This was the same area that I was in when I had my slight fender bender, and they kept me overnight. So I was familiar with the nurses. I was familiar with the area of the hospital, so that was good. But yeah, that was basically our home for the next 10 or so days. I wish I could say that, every day was the same, but we were on like an hour by hour basis. 1 hour she would be totally fine, I would be fine, and then the next hour she would decel, which meant her heart rate would drop. I had like super low blood pressure through all of this. So, like, my blood pressure would drop. So, it was literally just like a roller coaster up and down, which is exhausting and mentally and emotionally draining. I was basically on bed rest because I needed to be monitored with the baby monitor for like basically 24/7. I was allowed a couple of like 10-minute walks a day just to kind of like get up and get moving. But as soon as I was back in the room, I was in bed and hooked back up. So that was, not ideal, but I felt more comfortable being hooked up. I was very nervous when I wasn't hooked up because Millie was just like unpredictable with when her heart rate would drop and how her heart rate would drop. And so I really preferred to just be hooked up to the monitor so that like we had eyes on her and what she was doing in there. Kevin and I were very thankful at this point in time. Our village of our family and friends like really showed up for us. We are so incredibly grateful for just all of like the help and support and the well wishes that we got from, people that we love around us. My in-laws, who live 5 minutes away, brought us almost every meal. Um, my sisters would take shifts. I have, one sister who lives locally. I have one sister who lives down in Connecticut. She came and basically moved into our house. And so, they would take shifts of being in the hospital with us, giving Kevin a break. My sister-in-law would come and get Kevin out of the room and sit with me. My parents came up, and everyone, if they weren't, in the hospital visiting with us, they were taking turns at the house setting things up because obviously our nursery was nowhere near set up. I didn't have half of the stuff that I needed. The house was a mess. So again, like so incredibly thankful for our family and friends for really just stepping up because we had no idea what to expect. We were living minute by minute. And so they made, all the difference in the world. Every day, every hour, sometimes every minute was different. One minute I would be fine watching a Christmas movie, and then the next minute she would be decelling. The doctors would storm into the room and they would be having me roll over to try and get her heart rate. I would say the scariest moment I think I had probably in my entire life. Kevin had just left for a walk or a run. I like finally got him out of the room because when I moved in, he moved in. And so I wanted him to kind of get, some air and some space. And I like convinced him, I'm like, I'm totally fine. Like that happened to be a day that Millie was, kind of behaving. And so there was, no concern. And of course, as soon as he leaves, all of a sudden I'm watching, a Christmas movie, eating Christmas cookies in my own little world. And all of a sudden the door flings open and like 6 or 7 doctors and nurses come running in. Apparently Millie was decelling significantly. I had no idea. I guess the like volume was down on the machine, but all of a sudden they just kind of came running in, telling me to flip over, get on all fours. They're yelling at each other to prepare the OR for an emergency C-section. And I just remember like, I knew I was going to cry, but I just remember like just freezing and not knowing what to do, what to think. Kevin wasn't there. And I had this like moment where I was like, okay, this is it. Like she's coming. And like, this is kind of like our story. And then finally she simmered down. And things kind of calmed down a little bit. And one by one, the doctors started trickling out, and I was able to kind of lay back down. And Kevin just happened to stroll in, and I was like as white as a ghost, and he could see my face. And like at that point, I had froze. Like I was in fight or flight, and I was just so in like disarray. And he walked in and was like, what the hell happened? And I just remember breaking down and being like, that was hands down like the scariest moment of my entire life. He was like, that's it. Like, I'm never leaving this room again, which I finally convinced him, like, you have to leave, because I was going crazy with him in there. But yeah, that was one of the days and moments I probably remember most, and that forever will be kind of ingrained in me. But again, I just want to shout out like the amazing staff at our hospital. They walked me through everything that I needed to do step by step at all times. They were amazing. Like I cannot give them enough praise. So yeah, that was just a little sneak peek of the emotional roller coaster that, we were on constantly. A couple other things, like during the time I had every couple of days they would send me down to like maternal fetal medicine, and I would do like a specialized scan. One thing that they did find was I had like little to no amniotic fluid, which is really concerning because that's how the baby can get very sick and get infection. And that was part of the reason as to why I was in preterm labor. They still are unsure as to why I had really low fluid. So that's definitely something, when I do get pregnant again, and they're going to have to monitor that very closely because we still don't have answers as to, why this happened. But they were monitoring it very, very well, very closely. At that point, the goal was to keep Millie calm, and to keep me super hydrated, keep me calm, and to just get to the next day. That is one thing that you kind of experience with preterm labor, is like every time you get to midnight, that means the baby, made it another day. And so like I would want to stay up until midnight to celebrate. Okay, she's at 32 weeks and 5 days, 32 weeks and 6 days. Okay, we're at 33 weeks, and so on. And so reaching that next day was a huge, huge milestone for us and milestone for her. So that was definitely something, like we were literally just day by day at that point. One thing I am so incredibly appreciative of that I was able to do was meet with our NICU team. They were absolutely amazing. They would come in every couple of days and just walk us through kind of the process, what, they were going to do if Millie was born that day, what the NICU experience looks like at 32 weeks. What does the NICU experience look at 33 weeks, 34 weeks? Because every couple of days it changes for a baby, which is something that I didn't realize. And so every couple of days they would come in and kind of walk us through, okay, well, she's made it this far. This is now what we're going to do. And we're going to hook her up to this machine and see if this is working. So we were just so incredibly grateful and blessed to have a team of doctors and nurses that were like at our beck and call, answered any of our questions, no matter what time of day. They were phenomenal. And it made Kevin and I very at peace with our situation. We knew that we were in the best place. We knew that we were where we needed to be. Me being hooked up to the monitor, having eyes on Millie 24/7 was exactly God's plan and what needed to happen. And so finally, after a couple of days, we were very at peace with that. And that made me feel much better about the situation. It made Kevin feel much better. It made our families feel much better. And at that point, because it was so up and down, like our plan, like birthing plan, everyone talks about, what's your birth plan? Obviously, I didn't have one going into the hospital, but because we were there and we were meeting with our team of doctors, my birth plan was C-section, hopefully not emergency, but we had a plan in place if it was emergency. And we had a plan in place if we knew, it was going to be a C-section, but it was scheduled for, later that day or the next day. And so again, like we felt happy. It was, can we get to midnight? Can we get to tomorrow? And that was just the name of the game for us for those 2 weeks. You know that you have been in the hospital for an extended amount of time when the nurses that are taking care of you bring in a mini fridge for your husband so that he could have his own supply of Italian ice. I walked in from some maternal fetal medicine appointment, and all of a sudden I see this mini fridge that was stocked with Italian ice. And I was like, where the hell did this come from? And apparently Kevin was ransacking the like communal fridge and taking all of the Italian ice. So they wanted to give him his own fridge so he had his own stock, which I thought was very funny. But that's, we felt very at home. We had our Christmas lights up. I had a couple little Christmas decorations. Like they took care of us like we were family. I could not have asked for a better experience, obviously, given the circumstances. So about after 10 days of just like up and down, a few close calls, things started to mellow out. Millie was having less decelerations, which was great. I was definitely feeling better. My amniotic fluid levels were rising. And so at that point, I was just like begging any doctor or nurse that came in the room to let me go home for Christmas. This was the week of Christmas. We live 10 minutes from the hospital. So I was like, I will commute in like 2 times a day, 3 times a day. I don't care. Like, can I just go home, see my dog, take a shower in my own house, and like be home for Christmas? And at first they were like, absolutely not. You are here. And then once things started kind of taking a turn for the better, they started thinking about it and were not ruling it out, which they were doing in the beginning. So that was like, I kind of saw the light at the end of the tunnel where I was like, okay, like I'm going to get out of here. We're going to get to full term. Like we're going to be fine. On December 22nd, it was, I think like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and Kevin and my sister Lindsay were in the room with me. My sister had just given me a manicure, which, by the way, my sisters pampered me like beyond belief when I was in that hospital room. They would give me massages. My sister brought all of her tools to give me blowouts every day. Like I was like, I've never looked better, by the way. So my sister had just finished giving me a manicure with like a hand massage, and I was getting ready to go for my, like 10-minute walk. And I got up to get ready for the walk, and I walk by, I had like a big mirror in my room, and all of a sudden I look and my pajamas were wet. And I thought to myself, I'm like, did I pee my pants? No, that can't be my water. Like I didn't feel a gush, which is, all you hear about in movies and whatnot is like you feel this gush when your water breaks. Didn't feel that. And so I kind of, looked over to Lindsay and Kevin and I was like, guys, did my water break? And they both just like stopped in their tracks, turned around, and like faces like dropped. They were like, oh my God. So we called our doctor in to confirm that yes, in fact, my water apparently broke. I had no idea. I would have never known if I didn't get up out of bed. So all of the plans that we had in place for a C-section or emergency C-section went out the window because Millie decided that she was going to come on her own time, and I was going to have a vaginal birth because my water broke. So that was very exciting to me. I wasn't even like convinced that it was broken until like maybe 20 minutes later, and then things start happening, which no one tells you about. The changes, I'm trying to like put this in like a PG way. The changes that occur to your body, specifically when you're going to the bathroom after your water break, I don't even have words to describe. It's alarming. That's all I'm going to say. So then things started changing, and I'm like, okay, no. Like something's like this is real. Like I'm in labor. This is, kind of wild. And at that point, I didn't really have like any crazy contractions, which made the whole thing so bizarre because it was such a calm day. I had no crazy contractions. Millie didn't have any D cells that day. Like it was just eerily quiet, which was why I was excited because I thought they were going to send me home to be able to go home for Christmas. So yeah, just a super calm day. And she just decided like, all right, let's party. So contraction wise, I didn't really have them right away. And then they slowly started coming probably like an hour to 2 hours after my water broke. So it was a rather slow progression from like when I found out my water broke to when things started like really heating up. It was definitely like a couple of hours. But because I was already in a room and I wasn't like someone that's coming into the hospital that goes directly to the labor and delivery room, they kept me in the room that I was in all, the entire time until it was like go time. So they kept, checking, how are you on a pain scale 1 to 10, which by the way is very objective because I didn't really have anything to base pain off of. Well, actually I did. What I was basing my pain threshold on, and I will talk all about IVs at the end of this episode. The IV you get when you're pregnant, like that was the most excruciating pain I had ever experienced in my 30, at the time, 30 years of living. So I was basing my contraction pain off of that, and it wasn't even coming close. So I would say like I'm a 4, I'm a 5. Like I was very casual with it. My husband was getting very annoyed because he's like come on, like speed this up. Say how you really feel. And the people pleaser in me was like, no, I'm fine. Like this isn't bad. This isn't crazy. So, we just kind of kept to ourselves in our room. I remember we had a couple TVs and iPad and computers going. I think there was a Bruins game on. There was a Friends episode, and then there was Office Christmas Party. So 3 different screens happening at the same time. And I, at that point, was now pacing the room. I wasn't able to sit down. The pain started becoming very apparent. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what pregnant women talk about when they say contractions. Because up until then, I was like, contractions are nothing. Like this is a walk in the park. So again, I was too afraid to say like I'm a 10 because comparing it to the IV, I was like, this isn't terrible. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm okay. And all of a sudden, the NICU doctor came in and she said, I just want to let you know we only have one more NICU bed available tonight. And so she was like, if, Millie is born and the bed is open, the bed is hers. However, like we can't reserve it because if someone has a baby before you and that baby requires, a NICU stay or to be seen in the NICU, we have to give the bed to that baby, of course. And so they started making a plan for our baby to be brought to Boston and go to one of the NICUs in one of the Boston area hospitals. And at that moment in time, Kevin and I looked at each other and we were like, Absolutely not. Like we have been here 2 weeks. We left the city. We like find solace in that we are 10 minutes from the hospital. Like our baby is being born here. Our baby's going to be at the NICU here. Like that's it. So after the NICU doctor left and I really started to experience contractions, Kevin was like, "That's it. You're a 10. Make the call. We're going." Because we were getting that last bed. And so I did. So they brought me over to the labor and delivery room, which was different than the one that we have continuously had gone to prepare for like the C-section. And we were greeted by, I would say, probably like 10 ish doctors, both from like the labor and delivery side, but also the NICU team. So we had like a designated NICU doctor and designated NICU nurses, as well as my doctor who was delivering the baby, and then the labor and delivery nurses. It was like a full house. At that point, once we got to the labor and delivery room, contractions started to get out of control. Finally said, I need the epidural. So they cleared the room because apparently you can get the epidural when it's like you have to like sterilize the room. So Kevin had to leave. All the doctors had to leave except there was one doctor and then the anesthesiologist. So they had me do the whole thing to prepare for the epidural, which again, had no idea that you sit up, it goes in your back, they poke your back, had no idea. So she goes and kind of like pokes my back, which by the way, an epidural is very painful. And something happened where I like wasn't leaning over. You have to like lean over and like hug a pillow. I wasn't doing it right because I was in excruciating pain at that point. So she had to do it twice. So she pokes me again and starts to I don't know, I wasn't paying attention obviously, but it felt like there was like a tube going into my back. And then all of a sudden the man on the loudspeaker came over and there was some sort of code going on, and the anesthesiologist was like, I am so sorry, I need to go now. So whatever code it was calling for her. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like mid epidural right now. Like, you need to finish this. And at that point, I was delirious. Like, I was not myself. And so I'm like, not yelling, but I probably was yelling, but I was like, you can't leave. And, she very calmly said, she'll be right back. And that in a few hours, once I have the baby, I will understand like why she had to leave. And then fast forward, obviously she came back after and told me, and there was a child in the PICU that needed immediate assistance. So I'm so glad that she left because that's where she needed to go. However, in the moment, I was very unhappy. And she said, I'll be back in 10 minutes. So we waited. I was so uncomfortable. I'm like hunched over. I still have like the tooth pricks in my back. So all the pain and not didn't have any of the drugs, and they tried giving me like the nitrous oxide laughing gas. I felt so claustrophobic that I like couldn't put the thing over my mouth. And all of a sudden, something changed. And I then had this crazy urge to start pushing. And probably 15, 20 minutes prior to that, I was only 4 centimeters dilated. So I was like not far along. Like it could take hours. For some people, it could take a couple days. But all of a sudden, something clicked. And I looked at the nurse and I said, I have to push. And she's like, sweetheart, you cannot push. Apparently it's bad if you push and like the baby's not ready. And she's like, you can't push, that's not good for the baby. You have to wait till it's time. And I looked at her and I was like, no, it's time. And so they called the doctor back into the room. And again, room was still cleared from when they were giving me the epidural. And the doctor came in. And of course, I was just 4 centimeters 20 minutes ago. So she didn't expect me to be ready to go. And all of a sudden she looked and it was time. I was like fully dilated, baby's coming. So she's scrambling. People that were supposed to be in the room were not in the room. Kevin was not in the room. He almost missed it. So they, rushed him in. And he was able to kind of get to my bedside, and some of the other nurses that were supposed to be in there could not in time. So it was basically just my one doctor and then Kevin. And one push, she was out. Granted, she was 4 pounds. And I will say, throughout labor, the pushing part was the easiest. Like that, I had the least amount of pain. That was the easiest. It was the contractions that were literally unbearable. But yeah, one push, she was there, and that was it. I just remember, well, first, I was told, and they did kind of prepare me that I was not going to be able to do skin to skin with her just because they weren't sure what to expect with her being so premature. Which that was, kind of a hard pill to swallow. That was something I was really looking forward to. So like I was definitely, upset about that throughout my time in the hospital because that's one thing I wanted to be able to do, that you see all these other moms get to experience this moment. And, I was told that that wasn't going to be my experience. But very happy to share that when Millie came out, she was doing great. And so they did allow me to do a very quick skin to skin with her. So I'll never forget, they handed her to me. And at that point, like I'm going to be very honest for a second, which obviously I've been honest this entire time, but I'm going to be vulnerable. I thought that when they would hand me my baby for the first time, I thought I would have that picture where, I'm in tears, or have that video where like I'm in tears and I'm just, in awe. And it's this special moment that I will, remember forever. And I definitely think Kevin had that moment because I looked over and he was like, sobbing. Um, but I think I was so in shock of just the whole process and what my body had just gone through that I didn't really have emotion. I just remember saying like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," and holding her. And by the way, they handed her to me and she, had all the stuff on her. But she had jet black hair and literally Kevin's face. And I just remember being like so surprised when they handed her to me. I was like, I was not expecting her. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting her to literally be Kevin's twin, just with like jet black hair. So that's something I look back on now and kind of giggle because I was just very unprepared for, what I didn't know what she was going to look like. But I was able to kind of have that very quick moment with her where I did hold her. And then, I handed her off, and the NICU team did kind of their evaluations. I look over and Kevin had the scissors to cut the cord, which he told me he wasn't going to do. And all of a sudden, he did it, which I was very proud of him. And then just like that, they wheeled her away to the NICU. Of course, Kevin went with her to just make sure that everything was okay. And that was my birth. In terms of like what happens right after birth, again, very unprepared. So apparently after you give birth and they're checking out the baby, you have to like basically like give birth to your placenta. So that needs to come out. So they're like pressing all over you, and then they have to press on you like every 10 minutes for like the next hour to just like make sure that everything's like out and all of that. So that was very uncomfortable. And then also the hospital shakes that I only thought you got when you were having C-sections, because when I would see like videos on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it was, I felt like I only saw them during like or post a C-section. And so I was very shocked by this like sensation where like I was shivering, but I wasn't cold. Like my body wouldn't stop shaking. Like that was a very out of body experience that I was not expecting to feel. And then I just remember just like being so like physically exhausted. Like I could barely even move my eyes. Like I couldn't move the rest of my body. I couldn't move my eyes. Like I just laid there. And so they had me kind of just take like a quick nap for the next hour while they just like continued to like press and check to make sure everything was good. Kevin came back, gave me a glowing report on how Millie was doing in the NICU. And then they said I could go and like officially meet my daughter, which again, you see all of these experiences of other people and their birth experiences, and this was just not one that I had ever planned to have or expected to have, and looking back, I would not change it for the world. But yeah, seeing your baby for the first time, I mean, I saw her obviously when I gave birth, but I was like in disarray. But seeing your baby for the first time in a NICU setting where, she's hooked up to everything and, she's in her little incubator. We called it her box. She was in her little incubator. It was so special, but it was just different. They rolled me down there, and I got to officially meet her and hold her and do like the full blown skin to skin. It was so special. But for as crazy as those 2 weeks were and this whole kind of preterm birth experience, I would not change it for the world. Millie was happy. She, for the most part, was healthy. She was where she needed to be. She was in the care that she needed to be in. And I just feel so at peace with my story and my experience now. Took me a little bit of time to get here, a lot of therapy. But I will forever cherish this first birth experience that I had with her. So, yeah, that's basically it in terms of my story. After we spent some time with her in the NICU, they had me go back to our room so that I could get some rest. And I woke up the next morning, probably like 7:38, to my sister coming into our hospital room with Starbucks. I was very excited. And apparently, both of our families were at our house celebrating with bagels and coffee. I think my parents woke up they probably didn't even go to sleep, but they drove up from Connecticut and were like at our house at like 6 a.m. Everyone was just so excited for the first grandchild. Everyone that day came into the hospital, obviously to see Kevin and I, but to meet Millie, which I'll get into kind of more of that in the next episode when I like go into our experience with the NICU. But we were able to have everyone go in and meet Millie on the day that she was born, which was so special, 2 days before Christmas. And yeah, looking back on this experience and where I am now in life, I feel thankful that this was Millie and my story and our journey together. I honestly would not change it for the world because I am a different person because of this experience, and I am a different person since having Millie and having Millie in this way. This is just something that I will cherish forever. Okay, got all the emotional stuff out of the way. Now let's get into why we're really here, and that is to hear all of my unfiltered hot takes on the reality of the birth experience and the hospital, and basically everything that I did not know and was unprepared for. So let's jump into it. First, I talked a little bit about this, the IVs. Now, I am someone that I've had IVs before. I've gotten blood drawn. When you're pregnant, you get a lot of blood drawn. I have no problem with needles. Never have had a problem with needles. When they give you an IV when you are going in for labor, first of all, it's not a needle. It is like a skewer. It's crazy. It is so painful. It is not a needle. It's literally a tube. And half the time they can never find a vein or get it in correctly. And so it takes like multiple sticks into your skin. Up until giving birth unmedicated, which I'll get into that, the pain that I experienced by getting all of the different IVs when I was in the hospital for labor was the most excruciating pain of my life. There is at one point where they had 5 different doctors try and do it. They couldn't find either a vein or they couldn't get it in. I don't know what the problem was. So then they called in like the A squad. So it was these 2 ladies who came in with all their tools. They had an iPad with like the ultrasound sonogram thing. They injected me with ink. They were taking imaging of my forearm. I felt like I was watching like Pac-Man on the iPad, trying to find a vein that would be big enough to support the skewer. It was just insane. And it's in the most uncomfortable place. It's terrible. When you want to shower, you have to like wear a plastic bag. I'm just telling you, ladies, prepare for the worst when it comes to the IV. Like it's awful. Next, I want to talk about the like monitoring contractions. We are in 2025. Modern medicine has made tremendous advances. Why do we still have the oldest and most uncomfortable baby monitoring, belly band contraction monitoring situations? I don't understand. They are so uncomfortable. They're always falling off. They're always not picking up what they need to pick up. We need to someone needs to come up with a way to make more comfortable belly bands that fit, because mine was so big that they had to roll up hospital socks to put under the like monitoring circles so they could monitor the baby's heartbeat. Like janky. Like I don't understand how we do not have like just a seamless, simple band that just wraps around your pretty little belly and monitors everything. Like we need to fix this because it's so annoying. If you're staying there overnight and you like turn on one side, they fall off and then the nurses have to run in and redo it. It's a whole thing. So someone needs to get into the contraction monitoring belly band business because we need support there. Hospital food. Stick to the basics. Stick to breakfast. I probably had pancakes almost every single meal in the hospital. Most of our meals we outsourced. But I will say hospital breakfast kind of slaps. Home fries, eggs, no, don't do the eggs. But like you can't go wrong with a piece of French toast, pancake, home fry. Our particular hospital had the absolute best chocolate chip muffins, where I've driven by the hospital and thought about parking and going in and just getting a muffin from the little muffin stand. They are that good. So stick to the basics, stick with what you like. Hospital food isn't terrible. I also did not get crazy. I stuck to what I knew. Water breaking. Any movie or TV show that has shown you that water breaking is literally like if you were to pop a water balloon and it's just this like instant gush, they're lying. And yes, I know that is people that has happened to people. Probably it's happened to people more than it doesn't. But for me, it did not happen. And so I was very unaware that my water broke. And it's like I said before, it can be a slow trickle. So you don't even realize your water is broken. And sometimes your water doesn't even break. So again, like I said in episode 3, movies and TV shows do not do a good job at preparing us for the realities of birth. I still stand by that statement. This is something that next time I will do a much better job, and that is advocating for yourself. This people pleaser was just like I just didn't never wanted to rock the boat. And so when, they kept asking me for, what's your pain threshold? Are you a 0 to a 0 to a 10? Where are you? I would always score on the lower end because I don't know. I didn't want to be a bother. You're not a bother. Speak up. That is one of the biggest things I learned, is like advocate for yourself and advocate for your baby. Because if I had done a better job at advocating for myself, I probably would have been able to get an epidural, and then I would not have experienced an unmedicated birth and the pain that comes with that. And make sure you have a partner, husband, wife, whoever, family member that can advocate for you, because God bless my husband. He was my voice of reason throughout this entire process. So definitely, if you can't advocate for yourself, or you're, not great at that, surround yourself with people who can. Speaking of unmedicated births, I do need to issue a statement. I used to be that asshole that was like, why would anyone ever want to have an unmedicated birth? Like, there's no reason. Get the epidural. I still stand by getting the epidural. However, I now have learned through my experience some of the benefits of doing an unmedicated birth. Number one, you have bragging rights for literally the rest of your life. Anyone who goes through an unmedicated birth, like my deepest appreciation goes out to you because it is hands down the most grueling, excruciating moment in your life. So anyone who chooses to do that or has to do that, maybe not by choice, like I am so incredibly proud of you. You take this and brag about this for the rest of your life because Lord knows I'm going to do that as well. I also learned that your recovery is, for the most part, quicker and a little easier if you do have an unmedicated birth. Like I was able to leave the hospital literally the next day, which they had said if I had had the epidural, I would not have been able to. So that was something that I was very thankful for, that I was able to leave and my recovery was a little bit easier. Because I didn't have the epidural. Now, obviously, I know I was poked in the back multiple times. So, I still had those marks, but I didn't get the drugs. And I now will say I have a different understanding of real pain. So, not only is my pain threshold going to be based off of the IV situation, but also having an unmedicated birth. Those are going to be like my bars. So I now have a new appreciation for pain. Now, that being said, having an unmedicated birth is something I never, ever, 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 ever want to experience ever again. I don't need to. Next time, you bet your ass, I'm going to advocate. I'm going to advocate early, and I'm going to say, give me the drugs because I did it. I know I can do it. I don't have anything else to prove. I never want to experience that pain ever again. And I'm very grateful that when it was actually time and the contractions were full blown and I was about to push, it was very quick. Again, one push, she was 4 pounds, not a lot of damage. Very grateful. I don't want to experience that and have it be like hours long because unfortunately, like that can happen. So sign me up for the epidural. Sign me up. Okay, breastfeeding. And breastfeeding in the hospital. So this is like probably your first experience with breastfeeding. Um, a lactation consultant will come into the room the next day, usually with like the little pump that you can rent from the hospital. She answers all your questions, shows you how to use it, kind of, helps you make sure like the sizing of the phalanges is right and everything. Couple of thoughts here. If you know you're going to be using like your personal pump that you got like through insurance or whatever it might be, your registry, make sure you bring that to the hospital. I obviously did not have mine ready to go. So everything she showed me was on the rentable pump, which I ended up just doing because that's what I was comfortable with. But if you have like your own personal one, bring that in because they can help with that, especially with sizing. That is like the hardest part of breastfeeding is knowing like what flange, I don't know. Whatever that thing is, the size of it. And just making sure that like you have like good suction. I obviously did not breastfeed right away, or honestly at all. I tried it twice. But that was later on. But I did not breastfeed just because she was in the NICU. And so they needed to measure very precisely like how much milk and food she was getting. So I used a lactation consultant just like strictly for pumping, but she was very helpful. And if you do take the time to meet with them, like you are then able to call, they have like a lactation consulting line where you can call at any point. They can send people out to your house. So it was just like a good way to kind of like network with this program. Can I just say the parts to a pump, and not only just the parts, you have to clean each piece and part every single time. It is so time consuming. Yes, of course, it is very important, but like, I'm just letting you know, I was not prepared for the cumulative hours that you would spend brushing and cleaning and drying pump parts. So I'm just putting that out there because again, no one told me. Last but not least, I would say take as much swag as you can. And when I say swag, I mean like the stuff, like in terms of all of the like postpartum recovery things. So the pads, the ice pack, the Tux pads, the Tux wipes, the spray, all of those things are going to be your best friend. They are life changing. They make you feel so much more comfortable. The hospital gets that stuff in like donations and they get it in bulk. Like, take it, ask for more. Don't be shy. Bring an extra bag to fill. Like, this shit's expensive. And so take whatever you can from the hospital. I left with a lot of extras. I'm not even gonna lie. I saw the like refill cart. I felt like I was at a hotel. I saw the refill cart outside my hospital room door. I did steal a couple products from there. Sorry, it's going to good use, but yeah, do not be afraid to take it. It is yours for the taking. Once it's been in your room, they have to throw it out anyway. And so even if you don't use it, take it, take it, take it, take it, take it. That's honestly basically all of my thoughts that I can come up with right now. I know after this I will have more, but I'm very excited because I will have future episodes that talk about pregnancy, answer questions, things like that. In terms of what is next for Being Bubbly, next week's episode is going to be a deep dive into our NICU experience and kind of those early postpartum days. Shout out to Kleenex. If you are looking for sponsoring a podcast, I do recommend sponsoring next week's podcast because I can only imagine how emotional I'm going to be. So I'm just putting that out there. It was a very emotional time. But really excited to just get our story out there and to spread awareness for just NICUs in general and NICU families. And then after that, a couple more episodes in the making, and I'd love to hear, what people are really enjoying listening to, what people would like to hear about next. I know quite a few people have reached out in terms of like, would you be interested in having other podcasters come on or like guests of people that you know and kind of share their stories about certain topics? And yes to all of that. I'm starting to like sit down and make a plan for the months of like May, June, July. So please reach out with any thoughts that you have. And if you do not already follow if you do not already follow me on social media, Being Bubbly Pod, TikTok and Instagram, please do. And if you are listening to this on Spotify or watching on YouTube, make sure to give it a thumbs up, 5 stars, leave a comment, subscribe, download the episode. Please do all the things. It's just been so fun to see this thing grow, and I can't wait to see it continue to grow. And for that, oh my God, it just realized I don't have a glass of bubbly or rosé to cheers with you all. I have my cold Dunkin' Donuts French vanilla coffee. Cheers to being bubbly. Bye.